What is up, Flockers? That is my fellow Lockers and aspiring Lockers. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about some of the differences and possibly similarities with Braidlocs and TWISTLOCS. And maybe you're in a stage where you're trying to figure out which starter method is the proper one for you. So if you're interested in that, then stick around. The first thing when you're talking about Braidlocs or TWISTLOCS is the form, how they're formed. And it's pretty simple. The name pretty much sums it up. One is created with braids, the other one is created by twist. Depending on your comfortability and your experience, I know that might sound silly for some, but I realize that not everybody can plait. So for those that can't plait, maybe doing the twist is a better method for you and something that is simpler. I'm a DIY person. I started my locks myself, and so I try to bring information in a DIY sense. I am not against locticians. I believe that locticians are amazing. They have their place and they're for certain people. But for those that want to do it themselves or have, you know, cousin Ray Ray or TT do their locks for them, then this information might be helpful. So again, depending on whether you feel comfortable plaiting or if you're more comfortable with twisting, that could determine how you decide to start your locks. Now, why I said that there are similarities is because honestly, in the end, after a certain amount of time, all locks, or majority, 90-something% of locks, are going to mature to look the same, regardless of the starter method. So it's really not that important. It's important in the beginning, depending on your hair type, your personality type, your lifestyle, and things like that, what type of lock you may start with or what starter method. But in terms of the overall look and the longevity of what the lock looks like at the end or several years into the lock journey is not as important, because like I said, 90-something% of locks are going to look the same regardless of whether they're started with braids, twists, comb coils, and I can't think of all the other ways, interlocking, off the top of my head, instant lock method. Yeah, there's several ways you can start, but talking about these two. So the form factor. With braids, with plaits, it is a more condensed way to start as opposed to twist. So if you're the type of person that likes a fuller, fluffier look in the beginning, maybe you have thinner hair and you want to have the appearance of having thicker starter locks in the beginning, then twist is probably going to be the route that you want to go, because they swell more. They're, even when you start them, they're just typically larger and can expand more. Whereas braids are going to be condensed. So for someone like me who has very dense, thick hair, I didn't want a full look in the beginning because my hair is already super thick and full. So I wanted something that was going to stay condensed and look smaller and condensed. And so for me, braids was the way that I decided to start my locks. And there are pros and cons to whether you start with lock or start with braids or start with twist. You know, like I said, I wanted a more condensed, elongated to minimize some of the shrinkage and stuff like that. So that's why I chose to go with braids. But those that want the fuller look, those that maybe you want your locks to progress quicker and to mature faster and to stop having that pattern quicker, maybe you want to go with twist, because the braid pattern is going to stay longer than the twist pattern. The twist pattern is looser and it just lends itself to maturing and locking faster and getting rid of that pattern quicker. So that way you're not walking around with twist 3 years into your journey. Whereas with braids, there are still some of my locks, which from afar you can't tell, but if I were to get up closer, you can see some of the braid pattern in some of my locks still. And for some people that might be a game changer, a game breaker, whatever. It might mean the difference in whether or not you choose this lock style. For me, it was not an issue. It's still not an issue to this day. Seeing the braid pattern, I rarely ever am that close up to my locks looking in the mirror where I'm like, dang. So it doesn't affect me. With my locks being a single color, jet black, also makes it very hard to tell. When I had my color and I had my hair ombre, it was a lot more noticeable than it is now, not only to me, but to other people, just because that highlighted look obviously was brighter, and so it drew people's attention to it. With my hair being all one color and being dark, it doesn't draw attention to that. So that's something that you will want to keep in the back of your mind when you're deciding which one you want to start with. So the form, the factor, but again, they're all going to mature to look the same in the end. Something else that you want to keep in mind is if you are DIY and you're doing it by yourself and maybe you are worried about unraveling, braids typically are going to hold in better than twist. So if you're not wanting, if you're going to want to wash your hair but not have to deal with if it unravels having to redo it, or it just braids hold better. Granted, it depends on the length of your hair too. You know, if you're only working with 2 inches of hair, if you try to braid it, it might not stay in as easily as twist may stay in. But again, if you're washing your hair when it's 2 inches long, you're probably going to deal with unraveling unless you put on a stocking cap or something to hold it in place so that you're not dealing with a lot of unraveling. Yeah, you do have to think of that in terms of like your hair texture as well. If you have a very loose curl pattern, possibly neither one of these methods is going to work the best for you, because depending on how long your hair is, if your hair is pretty short and you have a loose curl pattern, it's probably going to be hard for twist or braids to stay in, you know, if you're working with this much hair. Now, if your hair is longer, again, curl pattern still matters, because if you have a super loose curl pattern, maybe braids will be better for you because they'll stay in better than just twist, because maybe twists are just going to unravel. You know, if you're working with the super loose curl pattern, twist might not be an option for you unless you're just going to keep your hair pulled back so that way they're not constantly rubbing up against things and moving to cause them to unravel. But that's also not a way to live if you're always having to keep your hair pulled back, and then that's tension. So it's probably not a route that you want to go down. So again, it is important when you're first starting your locks, the method that you choose. If you have super kinky, coily, tightly coiled hair like mine, I'm literally able to start with any method. I've started with every method and all of them work fine. They all stay in well. I've done braids, I've done two-strand twist, I've done instant lock method, I've done comb coils. I've pretty much done every starter method except for freeform, and they have all stayed in. So it does depend on the length of your hair when you're starting your locks, and it also depends on the curl pattern of your hair as to how well it's going to stay in. So keep all those things in your mind when you're thinking about starting your locks, and whether or not you decide you want to start with braids or whether you want to start with twist. But at the end of the day, your locks are going to come out fire regardless of which method you choose. It might take some time. You're going to have to go through some stages where maybe your locks aren't looking the way you want them to, but be patient and they will get there. If you found this video helpful, make sure to hit that like button so I know what type of information and videos you're enjoying, and also hit that subscribe button so that you can join the flock. And before you go anywhere, check out some of the other videos that have popped up on the screen. I will see you there. Bye.